The void between stars trembled. A microscopic distortion in space-time heralded the arrival of the Zarkonian Imperial Armada, a sight that had spelled doom for 217 civilizations across 3 galactic quadrants. Sovereign Krelvax's flagship, the Worldbreaker, emerged first. Its obsidian hull absorbed light, a darkness so complete it seemed to devour the surrounding space. Krelvax was no ordinary conqueror. Cybernetic augmentations glinted beneath translucent skin, each enhancement a testament to centuries of military conquest. 6 neural interfaces pulsed along his spine, each one representing a different conquered civilization. They were trophies, living data cores that recorded the final moments of worlds that had dared to resist. "Scan parameters," he barked, his voice a metallic rasp that cut through the ship's command deck. Lieutenant Vornax hesitated. Something felt off. The standard invasion protocols weren't registering. No panicked communications, no desperate military responses, no frantic planetary defense preparations, just silence. Absolute silence. In the classified underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Captain Elena Rodriguez allowed herself the faintest smile. Her team had been preparing for this moment for decades. "Target acquisition complete," announced Dr. Marcus Chen, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface that looked more like an abstract art piece than a military control system. "Zarkonian fleet is exactly where we want them." The United Global Council had spent years studying every piece of intelligence about the Zarkonian Empire, their rigid hierarchical structure, their technological dependencies, their psychological blind spots, what the aliens saw as humanity's weakness, its diversity, its ability to improvise, its fundamental unpredictability, was about to become their ultimate nightmare. On the Worldbreaker's bridge, Krelvax's irritation grew. Vornax explained the communication blackout. The lieutenant's 3 hearts raced beneath his armored exoskeleton. "Sovereign, our long-range scanners detect multiple planetary signatures, population centers, technological infrastructure, but no response to standard invasion protocols." Krelvax's cybernetic eye, a marvel of alien technology that could analyze 500 trillion data points per microsecond, began running diagnostics. Something was wrong. In 217 previous conquests, the pattern had been identical. Arrive. Communicate ultimatum. Watch civilization crumble. This was different. Deep within Earth's most secure facility, a team of the planet's most brilliant minds watched and waited. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka adjusted his quantum entanglement monitor, a device so complex it looked like a living crystal that breathed with mathematical precision. "Quantum markers are in place," he murmured to Rodriguez. "They'll never see it coming." The Zarkonian fleet continued its approach. Hundreds of ships, each capable of reducing a continent to ash in moments. Swarms of autonomous attack drones. Quantum compression weapons that could collapse molecular structures. They represented the pinnacle of galactic military technology. Or so they believed. Krelvax's communications officer suddenly jerked back from her station. "Sovereign, multiple anomalous data streams detected in our communication matrix." Before she could elaborate, random fragments of data began flooding their screens. Historical records, personal communications, strategic analyses. But something was wrong with these transmissions. They seemed to be coming from within the Zarkonian fleet itself. "Impossible," Krelvax muttered. On Earth, Rodriguez's smile widened. The trap was sprung. "First contact protocol initiated," she said softly. Not as a command of war, but almost like a gentle invitation. The Zarkonian sovereign didn't know it yet, but humanity had been waiting. Not in fear, not in desperation, but with a calculated patience that would redefine the meaning of warfare across the galaxy. The silent predator was about to show its teeth. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka's fingers moved like a symphony conductor, each gesture manipulating complex quantum algorithms that existed simultaneously in multiple states of potential. The quantum computing center beneath Mount Fuji was more than a research facility. It was humanity's most advanced weapon. "Infiltration sequence beginning," he announced, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. The Zarkonian fleet continued its approach, completely unaware that every system, every sensor, every communication channel was already compromised. What appeared to be standard planetary defenses were actually the most sophisticated technological trap ever conceived. Lieutenant Vornax on the Worldbreaker grew increasingly anxious. The data anomalies were spreading, like a virus that defied conventional understanding. "Sovereign," he reported, "our communication networks are experiencing unprecedented interference." Krelvax's cybernetic eye flickered. Algorithms designed to detect and neutralize threats were running at maximum capacity, yet they found nothing concrete to attack. It was like trying to fight a ghost. In the first phase of the infiltration, humanity's quantum network began its most insidious work. Each alien probe that attempted to scan Earth's systems unknowingly activated a cascading quantum virus. It wasn't just a simple computer infection. It was a living, evolving network of information that could adapt in milliseconds. Dr. Sarah Rodriguez, Quantum Warfare Division lead and distant cousin to Captain Elena Rodriguez, explained it to her team with a wry smile. "We're not just defending. We're teaching them a lesson about the nature of intelligence." The quantum virus worked on multiple levels. It didn't just infiltrate, it learned. Every communication burst from the Zarkonian fleet became a conduit for deeper penetration. Navigational pings, weapon system checks, intership communications, each transmission downloaded more than the aliens intended. On the Worldbreaker, Krelvax began to feel something unprecedented in his centuries of conquest: uncertainty. "Run a full system diagnostic," he commanded, his voice betraying a hint of concern. The diagnostic revealed nothing and everything. Fragments of data began appearing on secondary screens: historical records, personal communications, strategic analyses. But these weren't just random data streams. They were precisely targeted information designed to create maximum psychological disruption. A junior communication officer suddenly gasped. A transmission appeared to show internal communications, suggesting that the invasion was already a political liability within the Zarkonian High Command. Another revealed potential betrayals among senior military leaders. None of it was real. All of it was designed to plant seeds of doubt. Dr. Tanaka watched the progression with scientific detachment. Each alien missile launch, each communication burst, each navigational ping was becoming a conduit for humanity's digital infiltration. The Zarkonians were downloading their own defeat, line by line of code. Quantum entanglement markers are now at 78% penetration, he reported to Captain Elena Rodriguez. They're completely unaware. The truly brilliant aspect of humanity's strategy was its multilayered approach. This wasn't just a technological defense. It was a comprehensive psychological warfare platform. Every piece of intercepted and manipulated data was designed to create maximum confusion and internal conflict. Vornax's hands trembled as he tried to isolate the spreading information contamination. "Sovereign, our communication integrity is compromised." Krelvax's response was swift. "Initiate communication isolation protocol." But it was too late. The quantum virus had already warmed its way too deep. What the Zarkonians saw as a simple planetary defense was actually the most sophisticated technological trap in galactic history. Each alien system became a potential weapon against itself. Navigation computers began to produce slightly incorrect coordinates. Weapon targeting systems developed microscopic inaccuracies. Communication channels became increasingly unreliable. The invasion hadn't even truly begun, and already the Zarkonian fleet was being systematically dismantled, not through traditional warfare, but through the most insidious weapon of all: information. Humanity had transformed its greatest perceived weakness, its technological diversity, its ability to improvise, into an unprecedented strength. The Zarkonians were downloading their own defeat, and they didn't even know it yet. The silent invasion continued. The first true battle erupted not with weapons, but with information. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood in the United Global Council's most secure communication hub, a facility that looked more like an artist's impossible dream than a military command center. Holographic displays danced with quantum-encrypted transmissions, each one a carefully crafted weapon more potent than any physical missile. "Broadcast sequence initiating," announced Dr. Aria Chen, her fingers dancing across an interface that seemed to breathe with living data. Zarkonian cultural matrices are coming into full resolution. Years of synapsychological research had prepared humanity for this moment. The Zarkonian Empire wasn't just a military machine. It was a complex social organism with deep-rooted psychological vulnerabilities. Their hierarchical structure, which they believed was their greatest strength, was about to become their fatal weakness. The first transmission targeted the lower-ranking officers of the invasion fleet. It was a masterpiece of digital manipulation, a seemingly official communication that suggested high-ranking commanders were negotiating a secret surrender. The message was constructed with such precision that it would pass even the most rigorous Zarkonian authentication protocols. On the Worldbreaker, Lieutenant Vornax received the transmission. His 3 hearts raced, cybernetic implants struggling to process the implications. The message suggested that Sovereign Krelvax was already in secret negotiations with Earth's leadership, betraying the very invasion force he commanded. Krelvax's communication officer, Subcommander Lixnar, watched in growing horror as doubt began to spread through the fleet's communication channels. "Sovereign," she reported, her voice trembling, "we're detecting increased communication traffic between ship commanders. They're questioning the invasion directive." The beauty of humanity's approach was its multilayered complexity. Each transmission was a precision-guided psychological missile designed to exploit specific cultural and hierarchical weaknesses in Zarkonian society. Another broadcast revealed carefully constructed evidence of past atrocities committed by the Imperial leadership against their own lower-ranking soldiers. Historical records were subtly manipulated, personal communication logs strategically altered. The Zarkonians prided themselves on their rigid social structure, but that very rigidity was now becoming their greatest vulnerability. Dr. Rodriguez understood the fundamental principle. In a hierarchical society, information was power. And they were about to demonstrate the true meaning of power. "Quantum resonance at 92%, Dr. Chen reported. "Cultural dissonance algorithms are achieving maximum penetration." The first visible signs of the psychological assault began to manifest. Ships within the Zarkonian fleet started to alter their formation. Communication between vessels became increasingly fragmented. What should have been a unified invasion force was slowly transforming into a collection of suspicious, increasingly paranoid individual units. Sovereign Krelvax felt it first, a subtle shift in the collective consciousness of his fleet. His cybernetic augmentations, designed to provide absolute situational awareness, were experiencing unprecedented interference. Fragments of doubt began to penetrate his once impenetrable strategic calculations. "Initiate communication lockdown," he commanded, but the order came too late. The human team had already anticipated every possible defensive response. Each communication lockdown protocol was itself a vector for further psychological manipulation. Attempts to secure communications only spread more doubt, more confusion. On lesser ships, junior officers began to question the very nature of the invasion. Was this truly about conquest? Or was it another political maneuver by the Imperial leadership? The seeds of doubt, carefully planted, were beginning to germinate. A critical moment came when a transmission appeared to show internal Imperial communications, suggesting that the entire invasion was a political calculation designed to sacrifice lower-ranking soldiers. It was a masterpiece of digital manipulation, so perfect, so nuanced, that it was nearly indistinguishable from authentic communication. Vornax watched in growing terror as the fleet began to fracture from within. Ships that should have been moving in perfect synchronization now showed signs of internal conflict. Communication channels became increasingly erratic. "We're not fighting them," Dr. Rodriguez murmured to her team. "We're letting them fight themselves." The psychological warfare had transformed the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history into a collection of increasingly paranoid, mutually suspicious vessels, and they hadn't fired a single physical weapon. Humanity had turned information into the ultimate weapon. The invasion was already lost. Most of the Zarkonians simply didn't know it yet. Mars had never looked more beautiful or more deadly. What appeared to be a simple planetary defense system was actually humanity's most elaborate military trap in galactic history. Every asteroid, every piece of space debris, every abandoned satellite had been transformed into a potential weapon of unprecedented complexity. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood in the Mars Command Center, a facility carved deep within Olympus Mons. Around her, a diverse team of specialists from every corner of the globe worked with a synchronicity that would have been impossible just decades earlier. Dr. Aisha Khan, a quantum mechanics expert from Karachi, worked alongside Colonel Vladimir Petrov, a veteran Russian space strategist, and Dr. Juan Martinez, a Chilean AI specialist. Autonomous drone swarms are at full readiness, Martins reported, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface that seemed to breathe with living data. Adaptive response protocols are online. The first wave of Zarkonian ships approached, their obsidian hulls absorbing light, creating patches of absolute darkness against the red Martian backdrop. Lieutenant Vornax, still reeling from the psychological warfare that had decimated the fleet's internal cohesion, watched in growing apprehension. Sovereign Krelvax's voice cut through the bridge's tension. Standard planetary assault protocol. Initiate bombardment sequence. What happened next would be studied by military strategists for generations. The initial missile volley seemed standard, a devastating spread designed to disable planetary defenses. But each missile's trajectory was already anticipated, each potential attack vector mapped and countered before the first projectile was launched. Swarms of autonomous drones, each powered by advanced AI that could make tactical decisions faster than any biological mind could process, began their dance of destruction. They weren't simply defensive. They were predators. Some drones appeared to retreat, drawing Zarkonian attack vessels into carefully prepared kill zones. Others seemed to disintegrate, only to reform in unexpected locations. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that didn't follow any known rules of warfare. Quantum positioning systems are at maximum efficiency, Dr. Khan reported. They won't be able to predict our next move. The brilliance of humanity's strategy lay in its fundamental unpredictability. Traditional military doctrine assumed fixed positions, predictable responses. The Mars defense was anything but predictable. Asteroids that seemed to be passive debris suddenly became guided projectiles. Satellite networks transformed into weapon platforms. Even the planet's geological structure had been prepared. Massive electromagnetic pulse generators, hidden beneath the Martian surface, could be activated at a moment's notice. Vornax watched in mounting horror as ships began to fall, not through direct confrontation, but through a series of increasingly complex tactical maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of spatial engagement. "How are they doing this?" he muttered, his 3 hearts racing beneath his armored exoskeleton. The answer was both simple and complex. Humanity had transformed its greatest perceived weakness, its diversity, its ability to improvise, into an unprecedented strength. Each member of the defense team brought a unique perspective, a different approach to problem-solving that made their collective strategy fundamentally unpredictable. A cluster of Zarkonian ships attempted to regroup. Immediately, they found themselves targeted by a coordinated attack that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Drone swarms moved with a fluidity that suggested collective intelligence, yet each unit maintained individual tactical awareness. Adaptive camouflage protocols engage, Martins announced. The drones began to shift their electromagnetic signatures, making them nearly impossible to track consistently. Sovereign Krelvax's cybernetic eye struggled to process the chaos. Tactical algorithms that had conquered 217 civilizations began to break down under the weight of humanity's unconventional warfare. "This is impossible," he growled, but impossibility was becoming the new reality. By the battle's midpoint, the Zarkonian fleet had lost nearly 40% of its attack vessels, not through overwhelming firepower, but through a combination of psychological warfare, technological innovation, and tactical creativity that defied conventional understanding. Mars wasn't just a battlefield. It was a crucible that would redefine the meaning of warfare across the galaxy. And humanity was just getting started. The Tanaka Quantum Research Facility looked nothing like a traditional military installation. Nestled within the Japanese Alps, it resembled a living crystal, a mathematical marvel that breathed with computational potential. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka's life's work was about to change warfare forever. "Quantum entanglement disruptor coming online," he announced, his voice calm despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. The device before him was beyond cutting edge. It was a fundamental reimagining of how technology could interact with the very fabric of space-time. Where traditional weapons destroyed, this would unmake, breaking down the most advanced technological systems at their most fundamental level. Sovereign Krellvax's fleet was about to encounter something beyond their comprehension. The first indication came subtly. Zarkonian ships began experiencing microscopic system failures, so small they were almost imperceptible. Navigation systems would fluctuate by fractions of a degree. Weapon calibrations would drift infinitesimally. Communication channels would experience momentary, nearly undetectable interference. Lieutenant Vornax was the first to notice. "Sovereign," he reported, "we're experiencing systemic anomalies across multiple ship systems." Dr. Tanaka's quantum disruptor worked on a principle that would have seemed like magic to traditional scientists. It didn't just interfere with technology. It fundamentally altered the quantum state of technological systems. Each Zarkonian ship was a complex network of quantum-entangled components, and the disruptor was about to turn that complexity against itself. Quantum resonance cascade beginning, Dr. Elena Rodriguez confirmed from the Mars Command Center. Targeting parameters are locked. The genius of the quantum disruptor was its ability to create cascading system failures that appeared completely natural. A faster-than-light drive would begin to develop microscopic instabilities. Communication arrays would start to generate random interference. Navigation systems would develop nearly imperceptible calculation errors. On the Worldbreaker, Krellvax's cybernetic augmentations began to struggle. His enhanced perception, once capable of processing trillions of data points per microsecond, started to experience momentary lapses. Diagnostic systems reported nothing and everything. "Run a full system diagnostic," he commanded, his voice betraying a hint of concern for the first time in centuries. The diagnostic revealed nothing and everything. Microscopic quantum fluctuations were beginning to transform the very foundation of Zarkonian technological superiority. Ships that rely on quantum-entangled communication systems found their networks becoming increasingly unstable. Weapon targeting systems developed almost imperceptible inaccuracies. Faster-than-light drives began to generate internal feedback loops that would, if left unchecked, become catastrophically destructive. Dr. Tanaka watched the progression with scientific detachment. "Quantum markers are achieving maximum penetration," he reported to his team. "They're converting the fleet's most advanced technologies into their own destruction mechanism." The truly revolutionary aspect of the quantum disruptor was its ability to work at the most fundamental level of technological systems. It didn't just interfere, it rewrote the basic operational parameters of entire technological networks. Vornax watched in growing horror as ship after ship began to experience increasingly complex system failures. What had seemed like minor anomalies were becoming system-wide catastrophes. "Sovereign," he reported, "we're detecting quantum instabilities across multiple ship systems." Krellvax's response was swift, but already too late. The quantum disruptor had wormed its way too deep into the fleet's technological infrastructure. Entire squadrons of Zarkonian ships began to experience cascading system failures. Faster-than-light drives would suddenly convert their own energy into destructive feedback loops. Communication networks would generate internal interference that made coordinated action impossible. Weapon systems would develop targeting errors that transformed precision instruments into unpredictable threats. The invasion hadn't truly begun, and already the Zarkonian fleet was being systematically dismantled, not through traditional warfare, but through a fundamental reimagining of technological interaction. Humanity had transformed its scientific understanding into the most potent weapon imaginable. The Zarkonians were about to learn that true technological superiority wasn't about complexity, it was about understanding. The quantum dismantling continued. The moment of true desperation arrived with the precision of a mathematical equation. Sovereign Krelvax knew he was losing control. The invasion that should have been his greatest triumph was unraveling with terrifying speed. His cybernetic augmentations, once the pinnacle of galactic technological achievement, now felt like ancient relics struggling to comprehend an incomprehensible reality. "Concentrate all remaining forces," he commanded, his voice a brittle thing that barely concealed mounting panic. "Prepare for total assault on Earth." It was exactly what Captain Elena Rodriguez had anticipated months ago. The United Global Council's Mars Command Center transformed. What appeared to be vulnerable planetary defenses was an elaborate, meticulously constructed trap. Holographic displays showed the approaching Zarkonian fleet, now reduced to a fraction of its original strength, converging in what they believed would be a decisive strike. Dr. Aisha Khan's quantum positioning systems were already tracking every potential approach vector. "They're falling into the pattern perfectly," she murmured to her colleagues. Each destroyed target was a carefully constructed holographic decoy. Cities that seemed defenseless were nothing more than sophisticated projections. Orbital platforms that appeared overwhelmed were actually complex misdirection systems designed to draw the Zarkonians deeper into humanity's ultimate ambush. Lieutenant Vornax, the only senior officer still maintaining a semblance of composure, realized something was fundamentally wrong. The approach seemed too perfect, too predictable. But by the time he attempted to raise concerns, it was already too late. The first wave of Zarkonian ships entered the carefully prepared kill zone. Sovereign Krelvax believed he was making the strategic masterstroke. Concentrating the remaining Imperial fleet for an all-or-nothing assault seemed like the only logical response to the systematic dismantling they had experienced. What he didn't know was that every single tactical decision had been anticipated, mapped, and countered months in advance. "Adaptive camouflage protocols engaging," announced Dr. Juan Martinez, his fingers dancing across a holographic interface that seemed to breathe with living data. Humanity's defensive systems weren't just defensive. They were predatory. Drone swarms that had seemed dormant suddenly sprang to life. What appeared to be simple orbital debris transformed into precision weapons. Satellites reconfigured themselves with a fluidity that defied conventional understanding of technological systems. The assault began with what seemed like Earth's total vulnerability. But vulnerability was the most sophisticated form of deception. Each Zarkonian ship that entered the kill zone found itself caught in a multilayered trap of quantum-entangled systems. Navigation became impossible. Communication channels dissolved into meaningless noise. Weapon systems began to target their own vessels in a cascading series of catastrophic failures. Krelvax watched in mounting horror as his carefully concentrated fleet began to destroy itself. His cybernetic augmentations, designed to provide absolute situational awareness, were experiencing unprecedented interference. Tactical algorithms that had conquered 217 civilizations began to break down under the weight of humanity's unconventional warfare. "This is impossible," he growled, but impossibility was becoming the new reality. The human strategy was breathtaking in its complexity. They weren't just defending. They were systematically dismantling the very concept of invasion. Each Zarkonian tactical move was not just anticipated but transformed into a weapon against the invading force. Dr. Elena Rodriguez observed the unfolding scenario with a calm that belied the magnitude of what was happening. "They're learning," she murmured to her team. "With every moment, they're understanding how little they truly know." By the assault's midpoint, the Zarkonian fleet had lost an additional 60% of its remaining vessels, not through overwhelming firepower, but through a combination of psychological manipulation, technological innovation, and tactical creativity that defied conventional understanding. Sovereign Krelvax's final assault was becoming a masterclass in how not to conduct an invasion. Humanity had turned the most powerful invasion fleet in galactic history into a collection of increasingly confused, mutually destructive vessels, and they hadn't fired a single traditional weapon. The trap was complete. The invasion was over. Most of the Zarkonians simply didn't realize it yet. The United Global Council Chamber was a masterpiece of architectural diplomacy. Designed to represent humanity's diverse cultures, it featured elements from every continent: stone from the Andes, wood from the Congo Basin, glass from Singapore, metals from Siberia. Into this space of collective human achievement, they brought the architect of galactic conquest. Sovereign Krelvax was no longer the imposing figure who had arrived to conquer Earth. Stripped of his cybernetic augmentations, he looked smaller, diminished. The neural interfaces that had once been trophies of conquered civilizations now hung limp and disabled. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the chamber, her posture radiating a calm that spoke of something far more powerful than military might. Around her, a team of specialists represented the true strength of humanity. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, Dr. Aisha Khan, Dr. Juan Martinez, and representatives from every continent and background. "You will explain," Rodriguez began, her voice cutting through the chamber's tense silence, "how a civilization capable of conquering 217 worlds could be so comprehensively defeated." It was not a question. It was a statement of fact. Krelvax's response came slowly. The translation systems picked up layers of emotion, confusion, humiliation, a growing understanding that challenged everything he believed about conquest and superiority. "We underestimated," he finally admitted, the words seeming to physically pain him. "Not your technology, not your military, but your fundamental nature." The chamber remained silent, waiting. "A civilization should have a single purpose," Krelvax continued, "a unified vision. But you are chaos, unpredictability. Each of you approaches problems differently, yet you move with a collective intelligence that defies our understanding." Dr. Khan stepped forward, her quantum physics expertise evident in every measured movement. "Diversity is not a weakness," she explained. "It is the most sophisticated form of adaptive intelligence." The Sovereign's narrative began to unfold, a brutal accounting of how humanity had systematically dismantled the most powerful invasion force in galactic history. The psychological warfare that turned the fleet against itself. The quantum technologies that rewrote the very fundamental operational parameters of their most advanced systems. The tactical innovations that transformed every perceived human weakness into an unprecedented strength. Lieutenant Vornax, brought in as a witness, looked broken. The rigid hierarchical structure that had defined Zarkonian society for millennia had been completely shattered in a matter of weeks. "Your invasion was over the moment you arrived," Rodriguez explained, "not because of our weapons, but because of how we think, how we adapt, how we understand that true strength comes from collaboration, not domination." The United Global Council wasn't interested in revenge. They were interested in something far more profound: understanding and preventing future conflicts. Dr. Martinez pulled up holographic displays showing the complete breakdown of the Zarkonian invasion. Each tactical move, each technological attack, each psychological manipulation was displayed with clinical precision. It was a masterclass in defensive strategy that would be studied by military academies across the planet for generations. "We do not seek to destroy you," Rodriguez stated. "We seek to demonstrate that there are alternatives to conquest. That intelligence is not about overwhelming force, but about understanding." Krelvax looked at the diverse group before him, individuals who would have been classified as separate, potentially conflicting entities in his society. Yet here they worked with a synchronicity that defied his entire understanding of collective action. The surrender was not a military formality. It was a philosophical transformation. Representatives from the Zarkonian fleet would be given a choice: integration or return. Not as conquered subjects, but as potential partners in a broader understanding of galactic civilization. "Your empire ends here," Rodriguez said, "but something new begins." As Krelvax was led away, he understood a fundamental truth that would reshape galactic politics forever. Humanity was not just a species to be conquered. They were a force of nature, unpredictable, adaptive, uncontainable. The invasion was over. The real transformation was just beginning. The aftermath of humanity's victory rippled across the galaxy like a quantum wave, transforming everything it touched. News of the Zarkonian defeat spread through interstellar communication networks faster than light itself. Civilizations that had cowered under Imperial rule for generations watched in disbelief as the seemingly invincible conquerors were systematically dismantled by a species most had considered insignificant. From the United Global Council's Galactic Outreach Center, Captain Alina Rodriguez oversaw the most complex diplomatic mission in human history. It wasn't enough to have defeated the Zarkonians. Now they needed to reshape the entire galactic political landscape. Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka stood beside her, analyzing holographic displays that tracked the liberation of subjugated worlds. 37 planetary systems already requesting direct communication, he reported. 17 more are in preliminary contact stages. The approach was revolutionary. Where previous galactic powers had sought to dominate, humanity offered something unprecedented: genuine partnership. Each liberated civilization would be given a choice: complete independence or collaborative integration into a new galactic framework that prioritized mutual understanding over conquest. Lieutenant Vornax, now a critical liaison between human diplomatic teams and former Zarkonian territories, discovered a new purpose. His extensive knowledge of Imperial systems was being used to dismantle the very infrastructure of oppression he had once served. "We're not just destroying an empire," Rodriguez explained during a briefing. "We're creating an entirely new model of galactic interaction." The technological innovations that had defeated the Zarkonians were now being shared: quantum communication technologies, adaptive defense systems, psychological integration protocols. Humanity wasn't just offering freedom. They were providing the tools to maintain that freedom. On liberated worlds, human advisory teams worked alongside local populations. They didn't impose, they collaborated. Each civilization was encouraged to develop its own unique approach to governance, technology, and social structures. The only universal requirement was a commitment to mutual respect and collaborative problem-solving. Dr. Aisha Khan's quantum research teams were particularly busy. They developed communication technologies that could bridge seemingly insurmountable cultural and biological differences. Translation wasn't just about language. It was about creating genuine understanding. "Our greatest weapon," she would often say, "is our capacity to listen." The former Zarkonian military infrastructure was systematically transformed. Weapon production facilities became research centers. Military academies were converted into diplomatic and cultural exchange institutions. The tools of conquest were being repurposed for collective growth. Sovereign Krelvax, now serving as a primary source of information about Imperial systems, underwent a transformation few would have believed possible. His extensive knowledge was being used to heal the very worlds he had once sought to subjugate. "Diversity is not chaos," he would explain to other former Imperial leaders. "It is the most sophisticated form of adaptive intelligence." Humanity's approach defied every previous model of galactic expansion. They weren't creating an empire, they were facilitating a network. Each liberated civilization became a node in a complex, adaptive system that prioritized collective problem-solving over individual dominance. The economic implications were staggering. Freed from the oppressive taxation and resource extraction of the Zarkonian Empire, liberated worlds began to develop at exponential rates. Trade became collaborative rather than extractive. Resources were shared, not stolen. 6 months after the invasion's defeat, the galaxy looked fundamentally different. Where there had once been a hierarchical empire, there was now a network of collaborative civilizations. Communication channels that had once been used for oppression were now conduits of mutual understanding. Captain Rodriguez understood the true victory wasn't about defeating an enemy. It was about demonstrating a fundamentally different approach to existence. During a pivotal address to the Galactic Collaborative Council, she articulated humanity's core philosophy. True strength isn't about the capacity to destroy. It's about the ability to understand, to adapt, and to grow together. The stars themselves seemed to listen. The Zarkonian Empire was gone. Something far more complex, far more alive, had taken its place, and humanity had shown the galaxy that there were alternatives to conquest, that collaboration could be more powerful than any weapon. The real transformation was just beginning.